we will move on to the introduction to CEF eDelivery by Adrian Farial, from DG Informatics at the European Commission. So Adrian is the technical lead of the CEF eDelivery team. Welcome, Adrian.
Okay, thank you, Ines, Christiana, and Maria. I'm going to present you eDelivery. And why I'm doing this, if you would move to the next slide, is because indeed AS4 is listed in the implementing act of PNR, but actually it's not only AS4, it's the eDelivery AS4 profile. So it's a bit more complex, and that's actually what I'm going to explain today. What is eDelivery and what is the eDelivery AS4 profile? So just to give you a bit more of a context, eDelivery is what we call a building block of the Connecting Europe facility. And the Connecting Europe facility is a key EU funding program that was created by the Commission to foster the creation of a digital single market, which was identified as one of the top 10 priorities of the current Commission. And the Connecting Europe facility covers three main areas to connect Europe, which are transport, telecom, and energy. Within the telecom area, you have CEF Digital, which funds building blocks and digital service infrastructures. CEF Telecom works with guidelines that provide objectives and priorities. And then we have annual work programs, which are also selected by the member states and the Commission. So CEF enables the European digital transformation via the sectorial projects, which are, for example, in the justice domain, in business domain, in the social security. So these are projects that are for the citizens and cross-border, so they can be funded by CEF. Then the second type of funding is for building blocks. Initially, there were 5 building blocks, including eDelivery for the secure exchange of data and documents, but also eID for identification, e-signature for signing and sealing of documents, invoicing to support the invoicing directive, and e-translation for the translation of documents. Now you also have additional building blocks such as e-archiving, context broker, or big data test infrastructure that complement this list of building blocks. And there are also some grants, so this is something that can be quite interesting because it covers up to 75% of the eligible cost. When you reuse one of the building blocks, or if you participate in one sectorial project. So moving to the eDelivery building blocks and the use case, so it's, let's say, quite simple. It tries to solve the issue of you have a sender, an original sender, wanting to send a document or some data to a final recipient and to do it securely over the internet. And that's actually the use case, which is typically domain neutral. And eDelivery being completely business agnostic, it can be reused in many different domains. And we see here a few examples, consumer protection, procurement, justice, but there are many others such as health, aviation, railways, and so on. To explain how eDelivery works, so it's based on what we call a four-corner model, where you have on the left side the original sender, which is going to use as a corner one its backend system. So eDelivery focuses only on machine-to-machine exchange of data and documents. And so for that, you need a backend system, so an information system of the original senders to which the original sender connects to. And this backend system is connected to an eDelivery access point via a connector. So the access point is actually where the message will be translated into AS4. So as an end user or as a provider of a backend system, you don't need to worry or to care about the AS4 standard as such, because you can use an eDelivery access point, and it will be this access point that will translate and transform your message into an AS4 envelope. This connection between the backend and the connector is actually implementation specific. There are many implementations of and conformant solutions to the eDelivery specification. For example, in the one that we maintained, the open source software that we maintain at the European Commission and that implement the access point specification, the backend integration can be done via GMS, web service, and file system integration. So when the corner 1 sends the message to corner 2, the sending access point will transform it into an AS4 message and send it to the recipient, to the access point of the addressee. This is corner 3. And then this message will be made available to the last corner, the backend system of the final recipient, either by pushing, notifying the backend, or by the backend pulling the access point on a regular basis. And upon reception of a message, the receiving access point sends an acknowledgement of reception. To give a bit more detail on what happens inside the access point, we can move to the next slide, and where we see that what happens in the sending access point is the validation and compression of the message of the user, the signing or sealing of the compressed message, and then encryption of the signed message. This message is then sent over TLS, so actually it's two encryption, one at TLS level and one at message level. And upon reception of the message, the receiving access point will decrypt the message, verify the signature, decompress the message, validate the original message, and then send acknowledgement to the sending access point and make it available to the final recipient. Moving to why the Commission has selected AS4, actually, to be exact, it's not the Commission which has selected the AS4. Initially, it was in the eSense large-scale pilot, where member states, experts from the member states, were involved and selected AS4 as the standard that they wanted to maintain for the exchange of secure exchange of data in documents. And eSense ended in 2017, and the specifications were transferred to the European Commission. So it's really an open standard and has many different benefits. So to explain some of them, so it's based on the OASIS AS4 standard, which the Commission only profiles. So for example, in AS4, it is possible to encrypt, but you can also not decide to encrypt. You can compress, but you may decide not to compress. And then there are many different options. And what we do is to profile it and to make to select some options to make AS4 interoperable. So for example, compression is mandatory, and we define the an algorithm to compress. Same for encryption, we make it mandatory, and we define the algorithm to encrypt. Same for signing, we make it mandatory, and we define the algorithm to sign. So that's what we do, and the specification is freely available on the internet. The payload can be any type of payload, and there is no limitation on the size of the payload. Then, in terms of security, there is integrity protection and non-repudiation of origin via WS security and XML signature. Confidentiality is ensured via WS security and XML encryption, and we also have TLS encryption. We also have non-repudiation of receipt via the AS4 non-repudiation receipts, and also authorization managed via the PMOD configuration. The sending is reliable because there is a built-in retry mechanism to send at least once the message, and also at most once. So you can be sure that any message will be received individually. In terms of implementation, it uses state-of-the-art XML, web service, internet technologies and standards. And there are multiple open source implementations available. It allows cloud and on-premises deployments, and many different languages are supported. To our knowledge, there are implementation in Java, .NET, C, and Perl. It's also configurable, but we can provide also a default configuration via PModes. And the specific benefits, so you have this multi-layer redundancy in terms of security. It has been validated for real-life production use. Specification and feature are set based on input from and reviewed by industry experts. So there are many advantages and benefits to using AS4, and that's why it was selected by the member states in the Essence large-scale pilot, and why it has been taken over and is today maintained by the European Commission. So the eDelivery specification, moving on to the next slide. So we have, for the access point, we have the eDelivery AS4 profile, and there are two additional specifications for dynamic discovery, but that is not going to be used in the PNR domain. So I'm not going to explain, but in case that there are many and multiple participants, thousands of participants that may not be known a priori in the network, SML and SMP can be used to help with this specific type of requirements. So I was mentioning the grants a few minutes ago. So the current call for grants in eDelivery has opened on the 14th of February, will end on the 14th of May this year. There is an indicative budget of €1 million and can cover up to 75% of eligible costs. Eligible costs can be the deployment of an access point, can be operation of an access point during a period of 1 year, or can be the upgrade on the existing message exchanging solution to upgrade to comply with the eDelivery specification. So here, this is just an indicative, what we call the onboarding race. So here you can have an overview of the different projects with which we are in contact and show interest in eDelivery. So the more you move on the right, the more projects are in production. The more you are on the left, the more projects are evaluating. So you see there are many projects that are in different states and status, covering, typical CEF-funded projects, but also projects, different policy projects of the European Commission, but also other EU institutions and other EU agencies. And more we see eDelivery being used at a national level only for inter-public administrations and exchange between the businesses and public administrations in member states. So typically deploying eDelivery, you need to go through a process. In that case, I think that we are, let's say, already at the selection process, selection step in the PNR directives, since it has been already decided to use eDelivery. We provide a number of services, which I'm going to present a bit after today, to help with the adoption of eDelivery at every step of the deployment. Typically, the first step in your context will be to select the eDelivery solution, so the implementation, either going for an open source one, commercial one, or to build your own implementation. And then you need to deploy the eDelivery components, integrate them with your backend, and then run them in operation. And for all these steps, we can provide services which I'm going to explain a bit further. So this concludes this first part of the presentation, and now I'm handing over Ines to Mark.
Thank you very much, Adrian. So we will pass on to Mark van der Haast from the Ministry of Justice and Security of the Netherlands.